In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to take pictures of your flies on a pure white background. The photo here on the left is taken with the Sony RX100 straight from the camera. I took it in JPEG format. I did not mess with it in post at all. The one on the right is the same image, just tweaked in post a little bit. I actually use Photoshop to do that. Now, you don't really necessarily need a fancy camera or fancy tools to do this. But you do need a nice clean area to take your fly pictures on. So here I have a light box. You can buy them online for 40-50 bucks. It has just a fluorescent light on the top half of the box. And it just kind of surrounds your fly with nice, good, even light. And it's a good, inexpensive little tool to have if you're going to be taking lots of pictures of your flies. You can just use a piece of paper and blast it with light. I've done that on a tabletop, and that works fine as well too. Now, the next thing you have to think about is fly placement and angles. The one on the left is the angle that I use the most. It's just a profile view of the fly. It's my favorite. The one in the middle is one that I also like. It's just kind of an angled view, kind of taken from the front. It also works real well. And then the last is just kind of a third angle that I've thrown in there to show you what kind of a top view would look like. I don't think it's as usable, but I was just kind of showing you what three different angles look like. Now here I am taking a picture of a fly. I'm just using my little Sony RX100 in this one. I'm just kind of working the angles of the fly. I do use just autofocus. I just use kind of spot, just plain autofocus, the default settings on the camera. I do use auto white balance a lot of the times, or incandescent, which is basically set for your fluorescent indoor lights. Now, you do want to shoot on a low ISO, which is basically the sensitivity of the sensor on the camera. So I shoot at 200 if I can, all the way up to maybe 300. Much more than above that, most cameras, they'll start to get noisy, grainy, and you'll end up with an image that's not as usable or won't look as good. So here I'm just kind of showing you the different angles that I use. Just kind of zoom in. You can see how clean of an image you can get on the camera just from using the light box. Now the next thing I'm going to show you here is your aperture settings or your depth of field. You want to make sure that you're not using too big of an aperture. So I like to shoot at 5.6 or above. You can shoot in programmable mode or aperture mode on your camera depending on what you like. But the key is you want to make sure that f-stop or that aperture is above 5.6. Here I'm going to turn it all the way down to 1.8, which is the max aperture that you can shoot at on this little camera. And what you'll see, it's going to be hard to see in the screen here on the camera, but it is very fuzzy, blurry, because the depth of field is just way too shallow, especially in macro mode. So it's not usable. You really need to shoot at 5.6 or above. And you want to make sure you have enough light to do that. Here you can see I've compared an image, taken at f1.8 and f5.6. The f1.8, very blurry, very shallow depth of field. I do not like it, not usable. The 5.6 is kind of where it starts to become very usable. You can go up from there. You can shoot all the way up to f22 if you want. You'll most likely need a tripod to shoot at that deep of a depth of field. You also need a lot of light because your shutter speed is going to be so slow that you're going to probably need a tripod and blast it with light. But 5.6 is a pretty good usable starting point. Now here I'm using my phone, so no special settings. I just whipped out my phone, took a picture, and with that light box you can get a pretty good little image to start with. Now you don't have really as much control over the settings on your phone, but believe it or not, the default settings are good enough to get a pretty good usable image. You're still going to have to take it into post. So here you can see my iPhone photo and my Sony photo. The iPhone photo actually was probably a smaller aperture. It was probably F9, F7.1, I don't really know. I didn't look. But you can see a little sharper on the details. It's also going to be a little grainier though. You don't have control over your ISO in the default settings, so you're going to end up with a little bit of graininess. Now here we've taken our Sony image into Photoshop. You can see here's one that I've tweaked already. There's the original. And all we're going to do is just go through a few simple steps to just clean it up and get it usable on a perfectly white background. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our levels tool, which is on the left there, and you'll see a little dropper. And you want to choose, you're going to have three droppers. One's shadows, one's midtones, and the other's highlights. You want to choose highlights. And we're going to pick a sensitive area that already has some good highlights in it. So I choose the top up by the fibers. Now if you click down on the shadows like I just did, you can see it blows out the image way too much. So up there in an area that already has some good highlights going. Now we're going to take our eraser tool and we're just going to go through and kind of clean up any of the grunge and stuff that was in our light box. You're going to see dust specks, shadows, so we're just going to clean all that up. And you want to make sure that the eraser tool is set to white, a pure white background. Now that dropper tool we used initially, that is going to fix the white balance, and it's also going to fix a little bit of the exposure. So you're going to kill two birds with one stone. Now the next tool we're going to go into is the dodge tool, and this is going to help tweak the exposure without affecting any of the darker shadows. You want to make sure that it's set to highlights because we're basically going to be painting or dodging the highlights. You also want to make sure you have protect tones off up there on the top near the menu. And you can change the exposure. Usually I like to start around 30-40% and just kind of go through and clean up any of the little shadows or dark areas. You can adjust the size, and you can see there if you hold over an area a little too long with the dodge tool, you can overexpose it. So you need to be careful not to hold over it too long. And I'm just going in and finding some of the little nooks and crannies. The big area you're going to need to work on is the shadows right underneath the fly. Now here I'm showing you what you can do with the burn tool. The burn tool does just the opposite. It actually paints in a darker exposure. So I'm just kind of demonstrating that, showing you what you can do. And here we're going to go fix the underside of the fly. I'm going to go to a larger size dodge tool, and I'm also going to turn the exposure down a little bit. And I'm going to work it really slow rather than just trying to get the look that I want right away with the first click. I'm going to really work it and do it slow. That way I don't damage too much of the fine detail down there underneath the side of the fly. And then you can just go in and kind of work some of the small shadows in between some of the deer hair. And here I'm just going through and kind of cleaning up some of the little shadows hidden underneath the head and by the legs. And then at the end I usually will kind of burn some of the areas that I overexpose. So here on the legs, I have my burn tool probably set a little too dark, but I'm just working fast here, just kind of showing you the techniques. So I'm just burning the legs to kind of darken the exposure where I accidentally hit them with the dodge tool. Now I'm going to switch to my eraser tool, and I'm going to clean up some of the little fine shadows or some areas that I kind of blew out on accident. So there's a little shadow, get rid of that. And there's also a little errant fiber back there at the back. That's just kind of a straggler. I didn't see it when I was taking the photo, but I see it now on the big screen. I just get in there with the eraser, and I just kind of dial down the size of the eraser and just carefully get in there and just erase it. That's all there is to it. And really, that's all there is to it. You can get a pretty good, clean photo. It's not perfect, but I tell you, it's pretty good. It's good enough for most of what I do. Here's the last before and after. Really good, usable photo there on the right. I've took it with a basic point and shoot. You can pick up a camera like that for a few $100, $200-$300. You can even use your phone. But the biggest thing is understanding how to use Photoshop if you want that perfect white background. So hopefully this helped.